Okay. This is the introductory presentation, I suppose, for the geology, geomorphology theme for the Palolo project. This is a little bit different than some of the others. We have a fair amount of material, though. If you look at it, a lot of the material is actually really old. One of the major sources is from 1889, a lot of the rest of the 1960s. But what we want to look at is we want to look at the actual geologic, geomorphological impacts of Palolo. In other words, how is Palolo formed, especially what we see in front of us now? How has that impacted how the valley is used and what's available in the valley? And also how that actually applies at a very practical level in terms of things like soil morphology, which would basically include things like agricultural use. Palolo, at least in the mile side, is also famous for land slumping. So a lot of these issues are symptomatic. They're not necessarily unique to Palolo Valley, but they're certainly part of what Palolo is, especially in the 2020s. So in that context, we have sort of three main themes that we want folks to look at. And again, you'd have to pick one of these, and some of these are going to have more than one people because they're actually quite complex. We need someone to take a look at the actual discussion of this whole geologic process by which Palolo became what it is now. And this is sort of two events. One event is the volcanics event, which I'm not sure if there seems to be some disagreement about. There's not a lot of agreement by geologists about just exactly how this all plays out, apparently. And the second, and of course actually triggered a lot of this, would be the Kaimoki-Ka'au rift, which would include Wilhelmina Rise and all that stuff, all the way out through Diamond Head. So in this context, there's two major large geologic events that pretty much make what we see in front of us now, and actually are responsible for all the stuff that follows. We need more detail than what I've been able to find just sort of casually skimming the top of the literature, because I haven't gone in depth. And I'm sure that stuff is out there. If no other reason, the Corps of Engineers and other groups would actually need the detailed information when they're making proposals to change drainage systems or whatever else they might be involved in. There has to be more detail in terms of what actually occurred in the past, how that's actually, what is the geologic structure of the valley and the valley sides, and when did this apparently occur. I know there's a lot of disagreement about when Palolo was formed, when the Kaimoki Red Hill was formed, when Diamond Head was formed, varies pretty strongly. We need to have someone actually go in and evaluate the quality of the information, the arguments that are there. It very likely might involve trying to contact someone, if there's anyone over at UH that actually specializes in this. I'm not sure, and to be honest, it's not something I want to spend the time on, so that's why someone gets to do that. So that would be one particular task within the theme. The second task is a little more straightforward, though you're going to have to dredge up the information. To be honest, I'm not sure. I suspect Department of Land and Natural Resources at the state level might have this. I'm not sure which of the county agencies would have this information. Building permitting probably does, but I'm not sure. People could tell you, but what we need to do is we need to find out, and we need to get the actual specific data for the actual geologic processes in Palolo. This would involve things like stream and flood patterns. When, for example, how often has Palolo flooded? So this would also involve archival research and looking at the newspapers. When has flooding occurred in Palolo? Where does it flood? Is there any idea about why it floods in that location, not somewhere else? This would also include, like I mentioned earlier, this issue of soil slump and ridge instability. Why do those occur specifically in the valley? Why only in parts of the valley, not in other parts of the valley? So that would be a sort of a second theme, and this might involve several people looking at different parts of this, because I'm not sure exactly what the scale of detail is. We'd like detail down to the level of particular blocks or particular small sections of Palolo, and I suspect they've actually got to have that for permitting processes, but I'm not sure who has that or where. So part of this is going to be detective, and part of it's going to be looking back at historic records in terms of, newspapers and other archive resources in terms of past events. There's some rumors that there was a lot of flooding in Palolo in the past, though I've seen one or two articles that say actually this didn't used to flood very much. So I'm not, again, we don't know, and we need to make this crystal clear what the hell is actually going on. The third task is basically a detailed soil map and description for Palolo Pukete. This is the detailed soil morphology. I know these maps exist, though they're usually at a fairly large scale, but there should be more detailed ones. What type of soils do we actually have in Palolo? How do these vary from one area to the next? If we could, again, block level detail, but what we need to know here is this to be very both for now, but also in the past. What implications did this have for agriculture? What could you grow in different parts of the valley? What conditions were there? What would that, viably allow, and what would that not be allowed? So again, this is a fairly detailed, we want as much detail as we can get on the actual soils if we would have Palolo. We're going to be waiting on doing things like stream flow and stream analysis simply because we do not know when people are going to be allowed out, in the sense of being allowed in the streams. We don't want people doing stream sampling until there's a general free access to the island of Oahu. Otherwise, the residents will freak out, and we don't need that. So we're not going to be doing any of the sampling strategies until the field system starts up. Sorry for the interruption. So basically, these are the three themes we've come up with so far, but we will not be doing the actual physical collection of stream and stream flow analysis. One, we don't have access to the stream, especially we have to study the whole whole stream all the way back through Bukele. Secondly, is I just don't know. We have not clarified whether folks in our departments here are going to be willing to actually undertake the stream analysis. We can't collect the samples unless we know we can actually do the study. So the part of the project now is still going to be entirely archival and possibly some interview or discussion with specialists in the area. So with that, hope it sounds of interest and you want to get involved, and that's what we're going to be doing.